How hard will the Super Bowl hangover hit the Eagles? Well, I left that up to a paper football to randomly decide the fate of each NFL franchise. Each made paper football field goal attempt counted as a win, and every miss was a loss. Now, I'm breaking down each NFC team's record prediction in this, the second episode of Increasingly Clutch with me, Paper Football Guy. Welcome inside the War Room, where I am about to break down every NFC team's record prediction made by the paper football. The order that I'm going to go in will be by division, North, South, East, and then finishing with the NFC West. So that means up first, the predictions made for the NFC North by the paper football. The Vikings look like they're going to win their second consecutive division crown with a record of, check this out, 9-8. The paper football predicted the Vikings to go 9-8. Can you believe that? That feels right to me. Plus or minus maybe one. The actual over-under by the sports books for the Vikings is 8.5 wins. So the paper football and the sports books kind of agree on the Vikings. They overperformed last year with their record of 13-4. Again, they won the NFC North with that record. So some key moves that the Vikings made. They released wide receiver Adam Thielen. They released linebacker Eric Kendricks. And a lot of people called the Vikings frauds in 2022. And the sports books feel that way heading into 2023. And so does the paper football. But we'll see how the additions of Jordan Addison at wide receiver out of USC, whom they got in the 2023 draft, will affect things for Kirk Cousins, another weapon for him to throw to. But, the Vikings, it'll be interesting to see how their season actually plays out if they can go back-to-back in the NFC North. Time will tell. Moving right along to the Bears record prediction. The paper football predicted the Bears would go 6-11 in 2023, and to me that seems logical. Remember, the Bears had the number 1 overall draft pick before they traded it away to the Panthers. They went 3-14 in 2022, last in the division. They only won 2 games at home. The only other win came on the road. They did trade for wide receiver DJ Moore to get Justin Fields a bona fide wide receiver 1. But they also signed linebackers Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards. So those were really good moves by the Bears. Everyone seems really high on the Bears. The paper football, I think, has them right there in the pathway of exactly what they're going to be at 6-11. The over-under by the sports books for the Bears was 7.5 when I looked that up at the time of recording this. So I think that 6-11 is pretty accurate. We'll see, though. Time will tell. Of course, they drafted an offensive lineman, Darnell Wright, in the first round of the draft. We'll see how much that helps. Now, I do want to point out that the record predictions made by the paper football in all of the record prediction videos that you can see over on the Paper Football Guy TikTok channel, they're in no particular order. So the Lions is the next team that I'm going to talk about. Their prediction is not what people think it's going to be. I'll talk about that in a second, but the record predictions made by the paper football, again, in no particular order. So if, for instance, the first attempt was made by the paper football, which means that would be a win, doesn't necessarily mean that the Lions would win in week 1. So that's what I mean by a record prediction made by the paper football is in no particular order. The Lions 2023 record prediction as made by one of these, a paper football, is 5-12. That is a tough break, Lions fans. Now, historically, a 5-12 Lions team, that would not surprise me at all. It feels like they might be the same type of team that they were last year. Really tough to beat at the end of the season. But remember, they were one of the worst teams in the league to start the season. They finished with a record of 9-8 in 2022. They were second in the NFC North. So obviously 5-12 is a little bit light for the Lions. I think that, things would have to go very wrong. And again, the paper football does not predict injuries at all. So keep that in mind. Feel like that they're going to do a little bit better than 5-12. Sorry, paper football. Okay, that means that the Green Bay Packers were predicted to finish last in the NFC North by the paper football, remember. I had nothing to do with this prediction. The paper football predicted that the Packers would go 2-15, earning the number 1 overall draft pick in the 2024 draft. Absolutely brutal prediction. But hey, someone had to have the worst record prediction, right? So that seems very unlikely that would actually happen. I would give it about a 75% chance that they're a lot better than this. The ceiling for the Packers to me is about 10 wins and the floor is about 6 wins. The over-under by the sports books is right at 7.5. 2-15 seems way off the mark. The paper football, I don't know what was going on with it that day. It just would not go through the uprights. The 2022 record for the Packers was 8-9. They finished third in the division. Again, had that win and end game against Detroit. And they didn't really have anything happen in the offseason that's worth noting. So we just can breeze right past that. No one really talked about the Packers this offseason. And we can just move right along. Oh, wait. That's right. They did trade a guy by the name of Aaron Rodgers to the New York Jets. Another legendary Green Bay quarterback goes to New York. Absolutely crazy. Jordan Love is now the starter. Green Bay drafted defense in the first round, Lucas Van Ness, and then they basically added a bunch of weapons as the draft went on to help Jordan Love on the offensive side of the ball. But a 2-15 record prediction for the Packers. Again, absolutely brutal. And I'll say it again, a 75% chance that they are better than that. Moving on to the second division of this NFC record recap, the NFC South. Up first, the Saints predicted to win what could arguably be called the worst division in at least the NFC, definitely the NFC, but arguably the worst division in football, the NFC South. The Saints have a record prediction by the paper football of 9-8. I feel good about this one. They're at over under 9.5 wins from the sports books, and they were 7-10 in 2022. Does Derek Carr really move the needle all that much? 2 wins? Yeah, sure. You can get 2 more wins with Derek Carr as your, solid starting quarterback. But other than that, I can see this happening. 9-8 feels exactly correct for the Saints, and especially in a division, the NFC South, that isn't going to be very good overall. That means everyone has a chance to win it, like the Panthers, who are also predicted by the paper football to go 9-8. Now, to me, this would be their absolute ceiling. Absolute. They would not win any more games than this if I'm calling the shots here, okay? But I'm not. This is the paper football, but to me, interpreting it, that is their ceiling. The over-under on win totals for the Panthers, according to the sports books, 7.5. Their 2022 record, 7-10. Remember, they traded with the Bears to get the number 1 overall draft pick, where they took Bryce Young. And all reports so far from the Panthers side of things is that he's great, very smart, and obviously his size is the issue there. And we'll see how that translates to the NFL as we go. They lost DJ Moore, but they did sign DJ Shark, one DJ for another, I guess. And they also got tight end Hayden Hurst. And those were some key moves made by the Panthers. But again, the paper football predicted the Panthers to go 9-8, second in the NFC South. The third place team in the NFC South, as predicted by my friend the paper football, is the Buccaneers with a record prediction of 7-10. Again, bingo. 6.5 wins is the over-under from the sports books for the Buccaneers in 2023. So the paper football and the sports books love that record prediction for the Buccaneers. In 2022, with a guy by the name of Tom Brady under center, Tampa Bay went 8-9, winning the NFC South. That's why I think that the record prediction for the Saints to win the NFC South with a similar record, that is pretty much what is going to happen. I think the NFC South is just going to be a struggle to watch if you're a fan of one of these NFC South teams. But hey, I could be wrong. The paper football could be wrong. It's all a crapshoot at this point in the offseason. So they have Baker Mayfield now at quarterback to replace Tom Brady. I've seen those training camp highlights or offseason workout highlights, rather, of him not being very accurate with the football. But we got to remember, new teammates, it takes time to build chemistry. So don't hit the panic button just yet. Okay, last in the NFC South, as predicted by the paper football, will be the 5-12 Atlanta Falcons. Yes, that is correct. I agree with the paper football 100% here. I am so cold on the Falcons. I just don't see them doing much this season. The sports books like them a little bit better than the paper football does, with an over-under of 8.5 wins. But that would be their ceiling, if you ask me. In 2022, their record was 7-10. That was last in the NFC South, and I believe that's where they're going to finish again. And according to the paper football, that is true, and they don't have a quarterback. Let's be honest. Desmond Ridder, I just don't think is going to be the one in Atlanta. Time out from this episode of Increasingly Clutch so I can tell you about this amazing jersey that I have on. It is 100% custom made for me, paper football guy, and as you can see over my shoulder, I've got 2 other custom paper football guy jerseys. Now, each of these comes from fansidea.com. They are 100% the coolest things that I own. The numbers are stitched on. I was even able to get my logo stitched on there. My name, paper football guy, is stitched on the back. You can see it on the jerseys over my shoulder. They have tons of customization options for you to choose from. I'll leave a link in the description below for fansidea.com. You can make your own custom jersey there and save with the promo code PFG10 at checkout. Okay, let's continue this episode of Increasingly Clutch. We are past the halfway point in this NFC record prediction recap. All of the record predictions in this video were randomly made by the paper football. You can catch those record predictions over on my TikTok page. The Giants are the next team that I'm going to talk about, and the record prediction by the paper football for Big Blue is 10-7. That is 100% realistic. The sports books like the Giants a little bit less than the paper football, with an over-under win total of 7.5. The 2022 record for the Giants, if you'll recall, was 9-7-1, finished third in the NFC East, but they did make the playoffs, so that was an accomplishment for the Giants. They did trade for Darren Waller. I believe that is one of the bigger offseason moves made by the Giants, but I like that record prediction. I don't know if it's good enough to win the NFC East, but according to the paper football, it is. The next team, the Cowboys, America's team, quote unquote, is predicted to go 9-8. The paper football, that's what it said. Would you really be surprised? 9.5 wins is the over-under from the sports books. So that means it's 100% possible that the Cowboys don't win 10 games. The 2022 record for Dallas was 12-5. They finished second in the division. Dak Prescott, lots of pressure on him, lots of pressure on Mike McCarthy. It seems like it should be the Dallas Diamonds, because there's so much pressure on this team to not only get to the playoffs, but to win it all. And every year we talk about the Cowboys. Can they do it? Can they not do it? I just don't think it's their year. Again, paper football says their prediction is going to be 9-8, and we'll just see how it plays out. Moving on, the Eagles. Now, I mentioned at the top, how hard is the Super Bowl hangover going to hit the Eagles? The paper football predicted the Eagles will go 9-8 in 2023, and this just feels like a team that's going to sleepwalk to 10+ wins. The over-under from the sports books is 11.5. Their 2022 record was 14-2. I don't know if they get to 14. They did win the NFC East in 2022. I think that their subtractions on defense were kind of nullified with drafting the entire Georgia Bulldogs defense. So 9-8, not plausible. I feel like they're going to be well above 10 wins. in Philadelphia. So don't worry, Eagles fans. You guys are going to be good. You're going to be relevant again. Jalen Hurts is the man. That offensive line is the best in the league. And the paper football is just crazy that day that I made that prediction. So there you go. Okay, moving right along as we recap all of these records in the NFC. Predicted to finish last in the NFC East by the paper football is the Commanders with a record of 7-10. And if I'm being honest, if I'm searching my heart of hearts, that might be too many wins. The over-under for wins, according to the sports books, for the Commanders is 6.5. And let's not forget their 2022 record was 8-1, last in the division. So the prediction of 7-10 by the paper football, I endorse that. The Commanders gonna probably be in for a rough season. Sorry, Commanders fans. It's that's I'm a big feel guy, and that's just how it feels. Okay, so moving on, the last division that we get to talk about today. All these records again predicted at random with the paper football. The 49ers were predicted to go 10-7, winning the NFC West, according, again, to the randomized paper football. And this is dependent on QB, as all of these records are. If the QB sucks, then they're not going to do very good. But who is the QB in San Francisco? Brock Purdy, I guess. He seems to be recovering well, at least at the time of recording this video. Is it going to be Trey Lance? We still don't know what Trey Lance is. But 10-7 feels right because I feel like I could go play quarterback for San Francisco and they would probably win, 6 games. So I feel like if you actually had an athlete in there, you could get to 10 wins. So I believe that the 49ers record prediction of 10-7 is definitely plausible for the paper football. The over-under from the sports books is 10.5 wins. So right in step with each other are the paper football and the sports books. Just to recap, the 2022 49ers were 13-4. Okay, let's move right along as we finish up these NFC record recaps. The Seahawks also predicted to go 10-7 in the NFC West. That is right on the money if you ask me. It's a little bit better of a prediction than what the sports books are giving the Seahawks at plus or minus 8.5 wins. So we'll see how that shakes out. But to me, the Seahawks at 10-7, as predicted by the paper football, is right on the money. They did finish second in the division last year with a record of 9-8, squeaking into the playoffs with some help. If you'll remember, they did re-sign Bobby Wagner, which I love that signing. He should have never left Seattle, but that's just how the business works, I suppose. Moving on, in the NFC West, the Arizona Cardinals record prediction made by the paper football was 7-10. And again, this is another record prediction that I think might be too steep when it comes to the win totals. The sports books do not like Arizona, as the over-under is set to 4.5 wins. That is why I think 7 is just the absolute ceiling for the Cardinals. The new uniforms, I'm sorry, they don't do enough for me, and they are not going to do enough for you on the field. 4-13 was the 2022 record. Remember, Kyler Murray got hurt. He's going to still be recovering as we kick off the 2023 season. So 7-10, that feels like, again, the absolute ceiling for the Redbirds, especially after the release of DeAndre Hopkins with no real replacement plan for him. And it's just not going to go well for the Cardinals in 2023. Again, a big feel guy. I just feel like it's going to be bad. I know the paper football predicted Green Bay would have the number 1 overall draft pick, but it honestly wouldn't shock me if it's actually the Cardinals. Okay, we are down to the final team of this record prediction recap, the Rams. 1 year removed from winning the Super Bowl, the paper football predicted that LA would go 5-12. Yeah, that is unlikely, but I can see it. I mean, we don't know how Matthew Stafford is going to come back and play. He had problems and he hopefully got those fixed, but you just don't know how, an injury like that is going to react once you actually get back on the field with live bullets coming at you from the defense. Again, 5-12 is an unlikely record for the Rams, but 6.5 wins is the over-under from the sports books. But I believe that the combination of Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford, if he stays healthy, is going to be worth probably 8 wins, I believe, would be that seems like that could be reachable for LA if I was making the prediction. But I am not. These records were all predicted by a paper football. The Rams were 5-12 in 2022, so you can't tell me that they won't go 5-12 again in 2023 with all that coaching staff turnover. And, they didn't really have any draft picks to play with, but they did draft 14 players, so some wheeling and dealing from the Rams. That's going to do it for this episode of Increasingly Clutch. Thank you so much for tuning in. Tackle that subscribe button if you love football.